One of the largest Christian denominations is kicking out churches who have women as pastors.
Yeah, the Southern Baptist Convention says it's biblical, but others say the church is losing gifted leaders. WBTV's David Wisnett is live in Salisbury tonight. And David, you spoke with some local churches about this move. Was the vote about all this, though, at the convention very close?
No, in fact, it was not close at all, John. Overwhelmingly, messengers at the convention say that they support the idea that the Bible defines the role of pastor as being exclusively for a male. But there are Southern Baptists who disagree with that. They say that women have an equal calling from God for ministry.
The affirmative has it, and the motion carries.
And with that, the Southern Baptist Convention affirmed that men and women in Southern Baptist churches have different roles. And when it comes to the role of pastor,
the Bible clearly states in 1 Timothy and Titus that that role is reserved for a male.
I think God has called men and women to serve in ministry roles, and God has equipped and enabled men and women to do it very faithfully and effectively.
Two SBC pastors, two opinions of the roles of women in the church.
Always strive to study my Bible. That's what we're here doing today.
Connie Carroll is a member of First Baptist Kannapolis. Today she was asking her pastor about the vote at the SBC this week.
There are many things in the Bible that people have debated for years.
And that debate had both pastors closely watching what was happening at the convention. Two churches were denied appeals after being expelled for having women pastors. Delegates or messengers also made a preliminary vote to amend the Constitution that the SBC affirmed that it would employ only men as any kind of pastor or elder. First Baptist Kannapolis has a woman on staff now.
I think the convention probably got it wrong in trying to mandate something to local churches scattered across America without knowing the background, the context, and the needs of those congregations, and probably also ignoring the fact that in many congregations, women are doing very effective and faithful ministry.
I think it was absolutely the correct call to make, because as Christians, we should believe in biblical authority. We should believe and stand on the precepts of this Bible, and the role of pastor is reserved for a male.
Now, all Southern Baptist churches are autonomous. In other words, they don't have to do anything the Southern Baptist Convention says that they have to do. This shows that at least in some cases there are consequences. And two of the most familiar names in Baptist life are Annie Armstrong and Lottie Moon, two women associated with giving, missions, and spreading the gospel. Reporting live in Salisbury, David Wisnett, WBTV, on your side.
All right, David, certainly different people interpreting the Bible different ways. Now, we've reached out to several of